What's up, everybody? Welcome back to your favorite New York Jets subscription podcast, Badlands. I'm your host, Joe Caporoso, joined as always by Aaron Rodgers. I feel like I may as well have just slept in this chair from yesterday now because there's something to talk about every 12 hours. But we're back. We're going to take a breath. We're going to talk Rodgers news. We're going to answer a lot of Discord questions. And then in War Room, we're going to talk some other stuff besides Rodgers. CR, how you doing? How you feeling? I think you're finally home for a week, like first time in a few months, right?
I genuinely am home for a week for the first time in what feels like a really long time. And nice of the Jets. Like, we didn't even have a Super Bowl without the Jets in the news. You got to respect.
They won the day yesterday. It was the most exciting thing that happened.
Not even close. Not even close. The Rodgers conversation lasted for hours while the actual competitive nature of the Super Bowl lasted for 15 minutes. So, yeah, I'm good. I'm really excited to this is the time of year we get the draft guide. I don't want to say going because I've been writing scouting reports since last June, but we pick the players we're each going to write about. Dan does a lot of interface stuff. We really start implementing all the data of the players because you're getting heights and weights at the combine. You're getting athletic testing into pro days. So it's a good time of year. I like being in this bubble and really working on all the draft stuff. And somehow in a year we thought the Jets draft would not be as notable. Boy, were we wrong.
Yeah, top 7 pick. And we have this little 2-week lull, I'll call it, before the scouting combine. And then once that happens, it's kind of like dead sprint into the league year. And for us, the live show, the draft guide, and the draft. So famous last words. I'm sure there could be some version of an emergency pod the next couple of weeks. But the fact that we got the Rodgers news already, we'll still have to see how it plays out exactly. So there'll be more to come there, and maybe a couple other, front office hires, maybe a senior offensive assistant hire. Do we open contract discussions with a player like Garrett Wilson? Remains to be seen. But let's talk a little more Rodgers. It's still what everyone's talking about within the greater Jets ecosystem. Unsurprisingly, there's a bit of a divide. I think there's certain people who are very angry about this. I think what I'm surprised by is that people are surprised by this. This has always felt like an 80-20 thing, I'd say, since the Arizona game, where it's like, all right, this didn't work. It's not going to happen. And like, there was a couple of like epilogue things that happened, like the Jacksonville game and the Miami game. There was also the Rams game and the Bills game. It always seemed that this was heading in this direction. And this was a guy contemplating retirement. It does sound like for now, he still sounds like he wants to play. The chatter is the Jets are going to grant him his release and allow him to pick his team, which makes sense because I don't know who's trading anything for him. Where the hell he ends up, I don't know exactly. It's hard to come up with a specific team. Pittsburgh keeps coming to the top of mind for me, but I don't know. I don't know if Tomlin's going to go that route.
I think their local media jumped on it and said they won't have interest in him.
So if it's not him, I don't know.
It's an injury. He's waiting around. Somebody gets hurt, and he has to play hero. That's what it has to be, that scenario.
It feels like that's the smartest way for him to play it. I'm curious to see how he talks about the Jets in the coming months, positively or negatively. I'm sure there'll be a couple like digs on this. We saw a little of the social media yesterday. I think Quinton Williams, effectively saying he didn't want to deal with another rebuild and deleted his entire Twitter account.
Oh, nice.
I didn't see too much other chatter beyond that. I try not to get overly mad at people who like younger people who just say something on social and then then you say something in the moment, like I get it. And he, clearly retracted it pretty quickly. I do think like this is why the Jets need a little bit of like a reset, right? Like this whole like thing we're talking about in Streets of Fire, which premiered today, by the way, like this era didn't work. It's time for as many places as possible, like a nice clean reset. New voice from the coaching staff, new voice from the front office, new structure in the front office, and will be a new guy under center. And, for the people who are angry about the decision, one, I don't think you should have been shocked by it. But two, I just think what continues to get lost in the discourse is that the Jets were 5-12 last year. They were really bad, and their offense was really bad. And Rodgers' stats, I know what they look like on paper, but we do need to be honest with ourselves and look at where all those touchdowns came from and how many yards away those touchdowns were. And what do the stats look like without that Dolphins and Jaguars game? And what do they look like without a couple manufactured 1-yard touchdown passes or shovel passes? So they're not bad. Like, he wasn't horrible, but, I don't know. He's like the 11th or 12th best quarterback in the AFC. And maybe next year you're going to have the 11th or the 12th or 13th best quarterback in the AFC, but in a way that allows you to move forward quicker and allows your new regime to sort of turn the page. I don't think the trade-off is quite as extreme, but clearly there's some strong emotion. So you've had a day to sit on this. We got some of your takes out there. Where's your mindset now, seeing some of the early discourse feedback on it?
I feel even stronger about it. And obviously, I was very low on the return of Rodgers. I had upped it when this lingered because the thing to me was, I was like, I don't know if he wants to play. And then the Jets said, it doesn't matter, no matter what, we're moving on.
Yeah.
I just think, I don't know if it's because I lived this season where, I dedicate every single game day to this team and not from when kickoff goes on until the clock runs out, like literally hours before and hours after. I'm not saying that makes me better than a Jet fan or anything like that. I'm just saying I remembered this season apparently much differently than some of the fan base. I think there's also plenty of the fan base that was just ready to move on no matter what, or happy that Glenn and Muji make the decision and ready to go forward with whatever that decision was. And then there's the other part of the fan base that thinks Rodgers should be back no matter what. I know there's a larger conversation than just this, but the Aaron Rodgers Jets beat Jacoby Brissett, Will Levis, Snoop Huntley, Mac Jones, and then they did beat the Texans and C.J. Stroud on Thursday Night Football. Legitimately.
That was thanks to the catch of the season from Garrett Wilson on 3rd and long. If that catch doesn't happen, they lose the game, I would guess.
That was their wins. And I'm not saying that's all Aaron Rodgers' fault, but he wasn't very good in big games. And a lot of people like to go, well, yeah, he was hurt. That's the problem. He's at the age where I think he's always going to be hurt. He lost his mobility. He's not the same player anymore. And it doesn't mean that he's a bad player or not a starting quarterback in the NFL. The problem is you are installing a new program. And Aaron Rodgers is not a guy at this stage of his career that is interested in being part of turning over to a new program. Just watch what the Lions wanted to do last year and watch what Aaron Rodgers wants to do on offense. This is not the same language. It's not. It's a totally different language. And I'm not saying he can't do it. I'm saying he doesn't want to do it, or he hasn't shown any proof over the years that he wants to do it. Remember when Todd Downing got to take over play calling and the Jets offense pre-snap looked like a totally different unit against the Bills when the AFC East was on the line, and a lot of good things happened. And then after that game, a large majority of all of that disappeared. I mean, do your own math there. So that's just where we are right now. And you have to ask yourself, and that's not even, I haven't even brought up the financial implications that if Rodgers plays next year, it is disastrous after that. So and there'll be some Streets of Fire, I feel like, that covers a little bit of that as well, just the finances of this team. But I think at the end of the day, the Jets did not look at this and go, you know what, let's triple down on the Rodgers experience, because you have to ask yourself, what is the range of outcomes? Do you think the Jets are winning the Super Bowl with Aaron Rodgers next year? I don't. Do you think the Jets are winning the AFC Championship game next year with Rodgers? I don't. Do you think the Jets could maybe make the playoffs? There's a chance. There's a chance. But the problem is you are not allowing all of these guys that just got in here and are hell-bent on changing things. They don't want the quarterback to be on the Pat McAfee show every week. They want the quarterback to play in the offense that the coaching staff is designing and drawing up that is built to help everyone on the offense, not just what the quarterback and Devontae Adams feel comfortable with. That's part of it as well. They don't want as much finger pointing. They want people to be accountable across the board. Aaron Glenn's quote was, this isn't about Aaron Rodgers. It's about the New York Jets roster. So if you didn't like the Glenn hire and you wanted Rodgers back, okay, like you're consistent. You are just in a different playing field than a lot of other people right now, but there's plenty of people out there that would probably be much happier with Mike McCarthy and Aaron Rodgers, and let's give this thing a crack because I'm tired of watching an attempt at a rebuild. But the Jets made the decision. Aaron Glenn wants this to be like the 90s when Parcells came in, where all the bullshit that's been holding back this organization, I'm not saying Rodgers is at the top of that. That's not what I'm saying. But the reality is when Rodgers is here, it's Aaron Rodgers culture. And Aaron Glenn is here now and wants it to be Aaron Glenn's culture. He is not a guy that, like Saleh and Douglas, and they were desperate people at the time, is just going to bow down with the potential savior. That, to be honest with you, just wasn't good enough last year to earn that title as the savior. So I don't think this is a hard conversation. I think people just lack patience. They don't want to watch a bridge quarterback next year like Tyrod, Fields, whoever it may be. And I get that, but that's not Aaron Glenn's problem right now. Aaron Glenn's problem is to turn the Jets away from being a fucking loser, which they've been for 14 years. And if he thinks this is the best decision going forward, that's going to maximize years 2, 3, and 4, rather than just putting all his chips in the basket for year 1 with Rodgers, a job, by the way, he's worked his entire adult life for since he retired playing right now, then so be it. So that's where we are, and I have no problem with it at all. And I hope Aaron Glenn, gets a little bit of the benefit of the doubt this year. I think that's going to be hard for people to actually give him. But I think you actually have to allow a guy to install a program. And the early signs with the firings and hirings he's already made and the power structure shows that he has the right idea.
Yeah. I mean, let us not forget the Arizona game, what it felt like watching the Jets that day. Just come out, lay down, and die, and get obliterated by a team who was 7-10 last year. They got obliterated by the Niners, who were
this team lost to New England
last year. They lost to New England.
Gerard
with
Mayo's
Jacoby
New
Brissett
England
playing quarterback. Yes, like the worst coach team in the NFL. They lost. There's so many bad, ugly moments from last year. Not scoring a touchdown against Denver, scoring 9 points against the Rams, getting goose egged with your starters against Buffalo. It was a bad year. They were really bad. They were 3-10.
They probably shouldn't have beat Tennessee. Honestly,
yeah, they got very lucky and beat Tennessee. Shout out Will McDonald for making a huge play and Will Levis for bowling a football to them in the first half, or they probably lose that game too. And Tennessee's picking first in the draft. So this was not a good year. And look, we've seen the push it all in for 1 year play by a new regime. That happened in 2015 with Maccagnan and Bowles, an executive of the year, Mike Maccagnan. And the Jets went 10-6, and they were terrible every single year after that until they fired Maccagnan and Bowles. So if you go about it that way, that has its downsides too. And I think Glenn, it's on him to think through a longer term lens and not act like that everything was perfect and humming last year. What did we see yesterday? We saw the Eagles beat the hell out of the Chiefs in the trenches. The Jets, who decided to divest in their defensive line going into this year, genius Joe Douglas coming from the Eagles. Clearly they hired the wrong guy from the Eagles front office. The Jets divested in their defensive line. The Eagles invested in it so much, they didn't even need to have Bryce Huff active to have the most dominant defensive line performance that we've seen in a Super Bowl ever. And how they got there is they ran the hell out of the football. They dominated it up front. Their quarterback had some mobility. I know Barkley wasn't great last night, but he carried them there and had a ridiculous season. Shout out Giant fans. Singletary really helped fill the gap there for you guys. For the Jets, like having a quarterback who can't be mobile, having nothing in the trenches in the defensive line except Salah's old buddies from San Francisco and draft picks that you're trying to make work, who you took in the 4th round, like that formula clearly isn't going to work, and we're not seeing it be successful. You have to build up a full roster like the Eagles did, and Hurts has his limitations. Obviously, a very talented guy, Super Bowl MVP, could run and create with his legs, but he makes plenty of mistakes too. It's not like he's been prime Aaron Rodgers that we saw 10 years ago the last couple of years, and it's still been good enough to Philly to be in the Super Bowl too the last 3 years and absolutely dominate up front because they dominated in the trenches and they found a different way to go out and convincingly win. And look, every year, has some differences to it, but I just think it was noteworthy to watch how the Eagles won that game last night. So, we move forward and we turn the page, and I don't think it's surprising that they're ultimately turning the page. I think that's part of what this hire was and what that they're looking to do. And I'll dovetail this into a question from Andy off the top. With Rodgers gone, if the Jets have a bad season again, how worried are you about the stars wanting out, even with the new regime here? Do you think they'll be patient enough to tough it out, or can you see anyone asking to leave? Now, I see people being like, well, like we saw Quinnen's tweet and Jermaine, you were with him at Super Bowl, said he liked playing with Rodgers and he'd like him back. At the end of the day, for the guys that you're worried about leaving, money will speak above everything, right? So Garrett Wilson seems to be the only one that everyone's really freaked out about. Even though the Jets have his control for the next 2 years, they pay Garrett Wilson. He's not going anywhere. Jermaine Johnson's not going to be in a rush to go anywhere, right? He's not wired that way. He's coming back from an injury. He's trying to play for his next contract. I don't know who is lining up to ask out. The Jets, let's not forget, the Aaron Rodgers offense is effectively running a 5-yard horizontal box passing game and check at the line option routes to one receiver. They threw the football, I believe, more than any team in the NFL last year. They were in the top 3. Did that seem like the formula to win a Super Bowl this year? Throwing the ball 600 times and not having your star running back ever get 20 carries in a game, which Breece Hall did not. The Jets built this whole thing, we thought, to run the hell out of the football with Breece Hall, with Braylon Allen, with Isaiah Davis, with a really good offensive line. And they threw the ball 600 times. They never ran the ball when they got into the red zone. And it was so Rodgers could go 28 of 37 for 220 yards with 2 1-yard touchdown passes and an interception, and they could lose every single game. So I think it's okay to say, you know what, we're going to run a different kind of offense. And I know we're giving the benefit of the doubt to some new guys, but it's okay to look at what you saw recently and be like, you know what, maybe we give Breece Hall 20 carries and see what happens. And maybe we throw some play action down the field and take vertical shots that are accurate and see what happens instead of just throwing Garrett Wilson 1-yard smoke screen so he could get lit up by the middle linebacker. Like this offense was totally broken for today's NFL. So I think it's okay to move past that. And I would like to think, to Andy's question, that a guy like Breece Hall, I don't care what he tweeted, he's going to get more carries next year. And if he gets more carries, he's going to be happy. I feel like Garrett Wilson will be happier. I feel like Sauce Gardner, playing with Aaron Glenn as his coach, has a chance to maybe make more plays and move around a little bit and enhance the value of his next contract and be happier. I just don't know, like, who really is lining up right now to go to Aaron Glenn and Darren Muji's office and being like, well, I want out because we didn't keep Aaron Rodgers. And if they do, then it's better to find out now and turn the page anyway, because it's not like this group of guys have won shit the past few years. They've been 7-10, 7-10, and 5-12. What are we talking about here? What do you think, CR?
I mean, I'm with